Hey, Yo House family. I'm really excited today because we got one of my buddies. He's literally like my brother. And this guy, Charles Jenkins, is a multi-award winning songwriter. He's a hit maker, Billboard #1 music producer, 9-time Stellar Award winning recording artist, Soul Train Music Award nominee, Multi-Dove Music Award nominee, and was named Black Enterprise Magazine's Urban Business Game Changer Under 40. That must have been a couple years ago.
It's been a few ago.
But Charles like done everything. He's doing everything. He's like a consummate entrepreneur. He's a faith leader, social engineer, ideator, communicator, a friend to like a crazy amount of people. But you'll love Charles. He brings energy wherever he goes. He brings light. He shines. Like seriously, his smile, his presence. I mean, it's next level. So I'm really glad, Charles, you're here. Thanks for coming on, man.
I'm officially nervous. And where the word get all that from?
I looked on your website. I want people to get to know you. We got a great group of people from around the world that are tuning in, about 20 different nations and, leaders in all these different domains. I know you're going to relate to the Yo House family. We call it Yo House because YO stands for young and old. And, it talks about in Joel and the literature that we're familiar with, that the young and old will have visions and dreams.
Yeah.
And so I know you'll love this group of people. I know you're going to connect to them, but I want them to know your story a little bit. First, how we met. I want you to go back to that moment, man. When we connected in DC. Share that story, man.
So you can interject at any moment. I'm gonna probably blow it at some points, but if I remember correctly, we were at the White House during the presidency of President Barack Obama, and we were there discussing issues that affect our cities. And we were in this meeting, and there was this table, like this U kind of shaped table, and I was sitting on one corner of the U, the round part of the U. I'm sitting here, Dave is sitting here, and so we're sitting next to each other, and we kind of are interacting at points. So it's lunchtime. And so we're walking, and I look at him, he looks at me, I look at him. We just kind of been looking at each other the whole time. And I think my wife is there, right?
Yes, she was.
And we're walking lunchtime, and so Dave says, "Hey, I think I like you. You seem kind of cool." I said, "I think I like you too. You seem kind of cool." And it's like we want to sit together during lunchtime, and it's like, what? And we become family members from that point on. It was the most oddest connection, while incredible at the same time.
Yeah, I remember like this how cool it was for me just to look at you. I said, "There's something about this guy. I don't know what it is, but I go, he's got something, man, that's pretty powerful." And then what's really great is I remember just spending time with you. We met up like in New York City, I think a couple times, and I had to introduce.
Started me to drinking green smoothies.
I was just gonna say that because, man, you were eating so bad, bro. Okay, hey, let's get into a little your story. I want people to know, like, give me a couple highlights of your life. Like, what were some of the best moments going back all the way to childhood? And then what were some of the most painful moments?
I was a kid. I grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida, a two-parent household. My mother was a school teacher. My father was an entrepreneur who owned a landscaping company, and he also owned a construction company. He did plastering, was his specialty. And, he was also a semi-pro golfer. And so as a kid, I was exposed to some really cool stuff. He would take me to the golf course with him every single day after school. And I would be locked in the car with the windows rolled up in Florida heat. But I was at the golf course, and he took me with him everywhere. And so as I think about my childhood and even my life, the thing that stands out in my life is my dad took me everywhere. And he was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 1982, passed away in 1986. But during that span of time, as my wife always reminds me, I saw pictures and images, both of my mom and dad, but hard work, being kind to people, hospitality, good manners. Even though I was a kid, my father would take me every Saturday with him to when he was doing landscaping, picking up leaves, and I couldn't mow the lawn because I was a kid or trim the hedges, but I saw that edging the lawn. I saw that, and I also saw the homes that we were working on, the nice families, the lady that would come out and say, "Got some sweet tea for you. Would you like some lemonade?" That registered in my mind as pictures and images of people who work for you, what it means to not treat them as subordinates, but to treat them as people, human beings, and to demonstrate kindness as we're out there sweaty and dirty and will be welcomed with so much love. And as a kid, I was raised around the faith world. My mother was a diehard believer. My father was not. My father listened to gospel music and they played golf on Sundays. Mother was a Sunday school teacher, missionary, made us go to everything. And, when I think about, my life in that regard, my mother, and these are some highlights, she took us to visit the sick. We would go by Miss Mary Daly's house and pick her up and take her to Piccadilly or Morrison's Cafeteria, all you can eat, Old Country Buffet, or we would go by senior citizens' homes and take them food or take them out to eat. My mother, this is a little interesting, but my mother would take us to our city's funeral home, and she would say, "Let's go see who died." And she would take us in, and we would be in there rubbing the backs of complete strangers on a regular basis. We thought it was strange that we're in here patting complete strangers on the back, and they would turn around and look at us, and we would be like, and then they would be like, and then they would go back to viewing their loved one while we're rubbing them on the back and patting them. But little did I know that I would end up leading a church in Chicago, the most historic church in the city of Chicago, pastored by Reverend Clay Evans. My predecessor was an iconic man of God who worked with Dr. Martin Luther King, was a leader advisor to presidents and mayors, and just transformative in the civil rights movement, working with Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier. Mahalia Jackson would frequent the church Sunday and sing. Aretha Franklin would come often. The guest for our New Year's Eve worship would be Aretha Franklin, and her father would preach. Sam Cooke was in Fellowship's choir.
Wow.
Johnny Taylor, some of the biggest blues R&B singers in the world. And this would be the church that I would be named the successor at 21. 80% of the church was senior citizens. My first year, I personally did 78 funerals.
Oh my gosh.
But, as I go back, the stuff my mother had us doing, visiting seniors, going to nursing homes, going to funeral homes, taking food, picking people up, prepared me to walk into this church where there's almost 1,500 senior citizens, And so the other thing that I will mention was, as a kid, highlight-wise, it sticks out, I took 7 years of classical piano.
Okay.
I hated it because I was an athlete. I wanted to, I played football, basketball, I was on the swim team, karate, all that. And piano was a thing that I hated. I had no idea the plans that God had for me as an adult. Even, I would dare say, in my early 30s. I didn't start my music career until my early 30s. So it was nothing ever foreseen for me. But one of my uncles was a principal in Earth, Wind, and Fire,
Okay.
an amazing band. And my grandmother played piano for all of the churches in the city. And so I would say, as a kid, seeing that, hearing that, and also having 7 years of classical piano, it prepared me to be, today I'm a music supervisor for film with Universal Pictures and tons of other stuff. But I'm just pointing to the dots from childhood to adulthood, and how, you know, we have no idea the things that we're exposed to when we're kids shape us for when we're adults.
But help me understand too, like, people don't understand the dark side, the pain side, that, you know, someone who's as positive as you, what you've had to deal with. Can you give us some insight into that in your life?
You know, I think from a kid, and you know, it is with all love and respect to my family. When my father died, you know, I was 10 years old, and as a young Black kid in St. Petersburg, Florida, with uncles who were not engaged or involved in my life, and with my father being gone, who was the preemptive positive image.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I found myself trying to find my way, and unfortunately, some of those bad pictures and images were what I saw, coupled with relatives who would make statements like to my mother, where did you find your kids from? Under a tree, or they're never going to be anything. So from a kid, you know, I heard over and over again that I was less than.
Mm-hmm.
I was not going to be much. I was not going to do much.
Hmm.
And I see a thread through my life from that moment all the way through, of, you know, at points wrestling with not feeling like I'm enough. My
Yeah.
wife just spoke about enoughness.
Mm.
And I'm reading and I being healed by and empowered by. I've been the underdog. There's a thread of being the underdog and being put down and being minimized and being perceived as less than, whether it's been as a student, as a kid, whether it's being a person, whether it's being when I accepted my call to preach the gospel at 16, and all of the young preachers in my hometown who were great saying that I would never, nobody wants to hear you, or nobody will ever want to hear you. Or when there was an opportunity to go to Moody Bible Institute, hearing the resounding crowd of ministers in my hometown saying, he'll never get accepted there. To the opportunity when the pastor fellowship came up. They don't want you. I heard that from preachers in Chicago and from friends of mine. You'll never get that church. To coming into gospel music, you know, you'll never be successful. Or, and then when I was, excuse me, when I released a song that went to #1, oh, he's a one-hit wonder. So the reoccurring theme is that, and I think anytime I'm doing anything, you know, when I feel like God gives me an idea, I have this it's me against the world kind of thought and idea, and I have to dig deep. You taught me something very profound years ago. Make sure you surround yourself with people who lead you and feed you. Mm-hmm. And so I have to reach up and reach out, mm-hmm, to make sure I'm filled and fueled, because I'm fighting a lot, mm-hmm, on the side. I'm fighting insecurity. I'm fighting fear. I'm fighting this whole underdog thing that people try to put on me, even after I've had a measure of success.
What do you do to spark that juice again when you're feeling kind of low? What do you do to get the creativity flowing?
For me, when I'm down, I gotta connect with people who are creative, progressive, productive, people who are, how do I want to say it, high octane, creative producers, they spill.
Mm-hmm.
They spill, they emanate. You can't help it. When they're full and overflowing,
Yeah.
whoever's around them,
Yes.
they spill over on you. And so there are people like you and Brant Kreider,
Uh-huh.
who, you know, I've gone to New York at moments he didn't know I was low. 5 minutes sitting with him, I'm like, I could change the world. It's like,
Uh,
it's like, and so I think it's important for me to be around people. There's a guy in Los Angeles, Lawrence Dobson. Rance, he's one of the best music producers in the world. He's produced Bruno Mars and Rihanna and whoever you want to name. Being in his presence for 5 minutes, you feel a energy and a creativity and encouragement. So I think it's why restaurants create ambiance. They want you to feel a certain way.
mm-hmm.
And so, because I have this theory, and it's mine. It might not be somebody else's, but it's mine. The ultimate creative is God. I mean, the sun, like everything has a designer. Everything has a designer. Nobody can take credit for the sun, though. Nobody can take credit for the stars. Nobody can take credit for the clouds, for the trees. Who created color? Like, who created green?
Yeah.
Right? So when I look at the cosmos and look at nature and I see God's creativity. And for me, people have said to me after I release a song that does well and another whatever, they say, how do you stay creative? And one of my thoughts is, if you want to stay creative, stay close to the creator, who is the ultimate creative. And so.
Wow, that's amazing. I remember when we went to Bangkok. What did Bangkok do for you? Like, when you look back at that moment, like what do you take away from that experience? And because I always tell people the Medici effect, if you're kind of not feeling creative, go to a culture that's different than you, and it's going to spark things. Tell me what it did for you.
I think what it did to me in a broad kind of way is it said there's more.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much more to be, to see, to do beyond my narrow world, which I could think is pretty broad. That's why I think what Bangkok did for me was it said there's so much more than what you've seen, what you've experienced, and what it said to me in that framework of there's more. There's a range of thinking that supersedes the level that you've been thinking on.
Oh, yeah. Come on.
Range of interpretation, which leads to both impact and accomplishment. The things you need to do, it stretched me.
Come on.
It stretched me. And here's the cool thing about being stretched in regard to what you're describing. A lot of times we are like a rubber band and we're stretched and we pop right back to where we were, and the experience is almost disposable. But I think in this regard, what Bangkok did for me was it stretched me. I don't know what I could use, but I hadn't gone back.
Come on. Yeah, dude. It's like you see another world. Yeah, it's like I tell people, it's like you go from universe to multiverse, and that's what culture does to you when you engage it. Hey, I want to wrap. I want you to think about this time right now, okay? We've had a lot of different people we've interviewed about this moment. You may want to comment on that, but I'd like you to highlight when you're in a moment like we are in, where you're feeling the social, cultural shifts, turmoil, there's negativity, it gets pretty, it feels pretty dark at times. People feel that darkness and feel like, when is this going to be over? How do you turn a switch in your head? Like what goes on in your head to still be positive, to still, you know, to have that positive air about you? What's going on in your brain and your thinking when you're looking at everything? Because I know you're seeing it, you're feeling the pain, but how do you shift it?
You know, I think, you know, it's been a lot of tears and a lot of pain. I did a live with Bishop Jakes, Bishop T.D. Jakes, well-known minister in the world. And there was a moment in the live when we both crashed in the middle of the live.
Mm.
And so there's been pain, there's been anger, there's been frustration, even with having some conversations with people. And I think for me, processing is very important. And I've been reading and reading words, and what has helped me to be positive is my ability to process and understand that there are some people that have been shaped by their exposure,
Yeah.
shaped by their relationships. There are some people, you know, just understanding all of the varying nuances,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's exposure, whether it's education, whether it's information, whether it's personal perspective that has been fashioned within someone, and knowing that A, there are people that have changed their perspectives. B, when you look at the protests on the streets, I've heard this from people like my mother-in-law who grew up in the 60s and other leading leaders who I've spoken to. It's never been this diverse.
Mm-mm.
It's never been this diverse. There's always been a element of diversity,
Mm-hmm.
and that is very small. Seeing people like the mayor of Minneapolis cry and say that the officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck should be arrested.
Yeah.
Nothing, at least I've ever seen, let alone many people in the African-American community have never seen before. I've sat on the board of trustees over all the colleges in Chicago. I've been a commissioner on juvenile justice reform. I've sat on the boards of the Attorney General, the state's attorney, and led tons of projects in Chicago, whether it's getting Walmart in town, Uber in town, Target in town, creating thousands of jobs, millions of dollars to the city's bottom line. I'm saying this for a reason. And then I get pulled over. For why? And then when I asked the officer, why did you pull me over? His response is, just get out of here, after he ran my tag. I don't know what came up with my tag because of whatever leadership. And then for all of the young brothers and sisters who are profiled in the same way, who don't have the titles or the tags or the roles or the influence, who end up in jail wrongfully, or for the people who are wrong, who do more time for the same crime. I mean, I can keep going down the line. For me to walk into a store and for nobody in the store to speak to me or say, how can I help you?
I know.
And a white brother and sister walk in right after me and I'm paying attention. Hi, how are you? Welcome. How can we help you?
I know.
To see so many differences, whether it's, you know, the things that I endured getting a mortgage, you know, I was promised Dr. Sam Chan, who's a dear friend. You know, I said, Doc, I've saved my money. My credit is good. I'm a partner in a company. And what mortgage should I be expecting? You should be able to get a LIBOR interest-only loan. And then for the my broker to tell me, I can't show all of this because you're Black. And the underwriter is going to see this, and they're probably going to try to launch an investigation to come after you because you're a Black man and you're not supposed to have this. And I end up with a subprime 13% loan. And we all saw in the world this whole subprime thing. It is written that targeted African-American communities. And that is an idea when people say systemic racism, it is that kind of stuff, along with tons of other things that are well documented. So for me, who lives the life, sees the stuff, for me to get ready to pull out of my garage, and before we pull out to go for a ride the other day, my kids say, Dad, before we go, before you pull off, what should we do if you get pulled over? We're worried. What is the protocol? Kids should not even be thinking about that kind of stuff. And I had to calm my kids down before we went for a ride to the beach. So what helps me be positive in the midst of all of the things that I have experienced personally, my friends have experienced, and then to hear people to say stuff doesn't exist, it's not real, why do you bring up race? You know, to hear that lack of empathy and it be apathy, you know, it led me to read and it helped me. I found this word egocentrism. And when I discovered that word egocentrism, which means a person does not have the ability to perceive what is happening on the outside beyond their own thoughts on the inside. They can't think beyond their own thoughts or perceive. And what came to me is what you have not experienced, many people cannot have empathy for.
It's good.
Until you experience it for yourself. And I saw a guy on the news who was at the protest fighting the protesters. Somebody wrongfully struck him and he called for the police. They drove past him and ignored him. Now he's screaming how unfair this is. And I'm saying, welcome. Welcome, welcome. And so my point is processing from an educational standpoint in my mind, okay, a lot of people are egocentristic, not in a condescending way, but because you can't see it because you hadn't experienced it. You're locked in your own thoughts. And I think there are a lot of beautiful people who've never experienced what people like me and so many others have experienced, and therefore they speak from their place of experience. They function from their place of experience. But I think if you have relationships with people and are able to get out of your head and get into somebody else's experience, and it's not just for what's happening in the culture from a race standpoint, that's in marriages, that's in business relationships, that's in a lot of times people can't hear other people beyond above their own thoughts. And I think that laces culture.
Hey, Charles, you've been a blessing. You know, I just want to leave you with a word of encouragement. You know, I've known you for a long time, and you are my brother. Your family's my family. I love you so much. I think about you. The promises that I feel that are in our spirit, they're revealed right now, and they're going to keep growing. And I do believe he's creating a platform for you. It's multiverse, man. It's not just one a universe. It's like multiverse. So I'm excited that you get to flow in and out of these different universes. So I'm encouraged by you, brother. I'm really happy for you.
Love you, Dave. I'm encouraged by you, and love Becca, the entire family. I love y'all so much.
Thanks, Charles.